How many of you have that friend that's just a little bit different? That's what I thought. I think we all know the kind. It seems like their brains are wired a little bit differently than ours. You know, they have no fear, no shame, no sense of embarrassment. They're just different from us. I see you pointing at your friend. I'm here to let you in on a little secret. I am not that friend. I never have been, never will be. See, growing up for me was very interesting. I was undersized and overscared. I'm the youngest kid in my family, and my mother and my sister took very good care of me, but they kept me overprotected. They made me very safe. And my mom had great intentions, but she made my sister and I scared of everything. She always played out the worst case scenario in every situation. For example, these are words directly from my mother. If you leave that stub toe untreated, you're going to get a blood infection, it's going to go to your heart, and you'll die. So needless to say, as a kid, I was very scared. You've heard of people being fiscally conservative. I like to say that I'm riskily conservative. And I don't think this was intentional by my mom. You know, that's at least what I've learned after years of therapy. She had the best intentions. But I want to show you Exhibit A. I want to take you back 20 years. This is me as a kid. I told you I was undersized. Do I look 15 years old in this picture? Not at all. So, as you can see from the date and timestamp, this was July 1996. I had turned 15 in February of 1996, and I received this raft as a present. So 15-year-old Chris, I was a big outdoorsman. I love fishing, I love being outside. And so this raft was my ticket to a new life, being out on the lake, catching fish, doing all sorts of exciting things. But I wanted to test it out first. It took me 5 months to blow this thing up. It did take me 5 months, it took me about an hour, but it took me 5 months from opening the box to putting it in the pool to test it out. So I wanted to make sure, because again, worst case scenario, I put this raft in the lake, and it's gonna hit something, I'll pop and I'll drown. So I wanted to make sure I was gonna be okay. So we had a swimming pool in our backyard. This is me testing out the raft. I had my life vest attached. And if you know anything about water safety, you can clearly see that life vest is gonna do nothing for me. It is not supposed to be that far up my back. But needless to say, I was a scared kid. And my fears, they didn't take the form of like practical, tangible things. My fears, because of my worst case scenario that I played out, were always based on what could be versus what actually is. And these impacted everything for me. It wasn't just making decisions, it was what cereal am I gonna eat in the morning? You know, I played out the worst case scenario, and I would always forecast the worst thing that could ever happen to me in any situation. And so for me, fears are different than phobias. So phobias are real things. And if you've ever seen somebody who had a traumatic life experience that same trigger, you know just how real and powerful phobias are. For me, fears take two forms. You have helpful fears, of course. Fears are a good thing sometimes, so they keep us alive. Some examples of helpful fears are being afraid to take candy from a stranger, or not getting into unmarked vans in downtown Atlanta. Those are all healthy fears. Healthy fears. I'm talking more about the harmful kind. These are the ones that derive from us internally. They come from our brains, and they keep us from experiencing life and situations that might change us, that could change our world. They take many different forms, the most mundane to the most extreme. For example, an unhealthy fear for me is eating the same food every time I go to the same restaurant, because I know what it's going to taste like. I never branch out, I never try new things. It could be saying no to my friends who invite me out for karaoke because I know that I'm a terrible singer and I don't want to be embarrassed and feel that shame. It could be something more extreme, like staying in a job or relationship that makes you unhappy, but you stay there because it's comfortable and you know what to expect, even if it's making you miserable. It's these harmful, unhealthy thoughts and fears that made my childhood what it was. And they influenced everything I did, even up into adulthood, until the day I fell in love. Aww. I fell in love with improv comedy. Didn't expect that laugh, that's good. So July 2012, I was less than a year of being back home in my hometown of Atlanta. I was miserable. I hated my job, I hated my life, I was depressed. I didn't know what to do with myself. And this was a new thing for me. I'd never really experienced this before. I was truly in the dumps. And I flew up to New York City for my friend James's 30th birthday party. It was a surprise party. He had no idea I was coming. It was so much fun. He and I were sitting at a train station at the Long Island Railroad, and I was about to head back into the city to go to my hotel room, and we had this 3-hour conversation. And he said, Bruno, you need something else in your life. You need to get out of yourself. You need to be uncomfortable. You should try improv comedy. I looked at him and I said, that sounds great, James. Now what? He said, they have classes for this. And I did a double take. I said, they have classes for improv comedy? I didn't know this was a thing. So I got back to Atlanta. August of 2012, I took my very first improv comedy class. And for the next year, every Sunday for 2 hours, I was at a theater here in Atlanta taking classes and learning this art. Now, for those of you that don't know, improv comedy is incredible. It's the art of creating something from nothing. You get out on stage with your team, you get a suggestion from the audience, and you try to create something entertaining. You try to tell a story. So improv comedy absolutely hooked me. And as improvisers, we're taught all the fundamentals. You listen, you agree, you support, but there's one phrase that rules them all. Yes and. Yes and is the foundation of every good improv scene. Every good laugh comes from a yes and. And it's such a simple phrase. It's 2 words. We'll break it down. It's pretty simple. So yes and. Whenever you're on stage and your scene partner says something to you, you have to agree with it. You have to say yes. And then the and portion of it, you have to add something to that. You have to make it bigger, better, bolder. Give them something to respond to. And this yes anding is amazing. You can take nothing. You can take a little nugget of an idea and turn it into a 3 or 5 minute comedic scene that gets laughed from the audience. Now, it's one thing for me to tell you about this, but after rehearsal last night, my friend Paul and I were talking, and we have an experiment that we're going to try. So I'd like to bring my friend and fellow speaker Paula back up on stage here. So is there a second mic we can get by chance? I know this is, we're improvising here. Thank you. So Paula is a friend of mine. We met last night for the first time. And so if you can, for the studio audience, tell us how many hours in your life you've spent taking improv classes or performing improv.
Carry the 0. I've spent 0.
0 hours. We wanted to show you what yes anding actually looks like on stage from somebody who's done it for a couple years and somebody who has 0 experience. So
I just want to say, when you asked me to do this, I didn't say yes. I said, okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a yes. So, to get us started, we need a simple suggestion. Let's see. I'm holding something in my hand behind my back. What is it? A squid. So, in improv, you yes and the first thing you hear. So, I'm holding a squid behind my back, and you'll see this scene in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sister. I just got back from the traps, look.
Is that an octopus?
You know what it is.
Oh my gosh. SpongeBob!
It's SpongeBob! It's Squidly. SpongeBob Squidly.
Squiggly is terrifying. Terrifying. It's a phobia of mine.
Oh, I hit a nerve. I'm sorry, and scene, that's great. So thank you very much. Oh, thanks. So that's what yes and looks like. That scene could have gone any 100 different directions. Had I come out and held up this imaginary squid, and she said, that's not a squid, that scene is done. She just blocked me completely. But she said yes, and she named it. That's SpongeBob Squidly. So it's kind of a weird concept. But what I've learned through my improv training is that you can apply these skills to anything. Saying yes and to something doesn't remove the fear. It just says that you trust the process, you trust the people you're with, and that you're in control. So I've learned through improv training that if I yes and the things that scare me, I take control. I don't let my fears control me anymore. And it's so simple. It's so simple. You just have to want to try it. Right now, I imagine any number of you might be thinking about a decision you have to make. Maybe you want to change your major. You're not sure what you're going to do after you graduate college. Maybe you want to break up with your partner. Who knows? Maybe there's somebody you want to ask out, but you're scared. That internal dialogue may be telling you you're not enough. You're not good enough. You're not good looking enough. You're not funny enough. You just have to say yes and. And before you can yes and somebody else on an improv stage, the first person you have to yes and is yourself. You have to tell yourself that you're enough, you're worthy, and you're going to go for it. You're going to take that risk. You're going to go out on stage not knowing what's happening next, and you're going to pursue that. Improv has absolutely changed my life. It's changed my perspective on everything. It's made me a better leader, a better boss, a better coworker, a better kid. I'm still a kid to my mom. But it's changed everything. So I am still naturally a shy and quiet guy. I'm actually an introvert by nature. But improv has really helped me come out of my shell. And afterwards, if you want to talk, I'll be hiding in a corner. But feel free to come up and talk to me. So I've gone on some adventures. A couple years ago, some friends of mine, we went up to Vancouver, Canada. These are some of my improv friends. We spent a week in Vancouver. And we rented a house and we explored Vancouver. We went to an improv comedy festival. It was amazing. That may not seem like much to you guys, but it took me until the age of 22 to get on an airplane for the first time. Because I was convinced, again, worst case, the first bump in that airplane, I was gonna throw up on everybody around me. And I got on that plane and I flew to Houston for the first time and I was like, hey, that was kind of cool. That was cool. And I'd never been out of the country before either, so I had to get a passport to go to Vancouver. This was like a big adventure for me. And just 2 weeks ago, my friend James, who I mentioned, the guy who got me started in improv, he was coming through North Carolina and he said, hey Chris, why don't you come up? Just fly up to Raleigh, we'll go explore the city. And that's what I did. I said, yes and. Yes, and I'll pack my bags right now. I booked my ticket that night, not knowing where we were staying, where we were eating, what we were doing. I had that opportunity to just be there with James, one of my best friends, probably my best friend. And what did we do? We drove around for 3 days. I slept on 3 different couches on 3 different nights, and it was like I was alive again. It was incredible. So here's my challenge to you. Whatever it is that is your internal dialogue is telling you, I want you to push past it. Think about a decision you made recently, maybe something you said no to. Why did you say no? Were you scared? Was it fear of embarrassment, fear of shame? What was it that caused you to say no? The next time you're invited to make a decision or go out to any sort of experience that might change you, that might help write the next chapter of your story, I want you to reframe it and ask yourself why you shouldn't say yes to it. Because saying yes can change your life, even if your mom thinks it's a bad idea. And I can't say it any better than one of the greatest improvisers and comedians of our generation put it. Tina Fey said, "The fun is always on the other side of a yes." Thank you very much.